You're listening to The Disconnect, a podcast about anxiety and how it disconnects you from your normal self. We're here to share our journey and help you through yours to show you you're not alone. And now, your hosts, Austin Grant and Lindsey Jones. Welcome to episode 11 of The Disconnect. For those of you who have been following along with us, we wanted to welcome you back. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we're so glad that you're listening. In the most recent episode, we talked about the white coat effect and both of our experiences with hypochondria. Today, we're going to talk about something that we've both been struggling with lately, which is this constant feeling like we need to be productive, or we need to be achieving that next thing, or we need to accomplish the next thing on our to-do list, like all the time.
Oh, it's really, really horrible. I personally have a really hard time. I've found recently, I'm having a hard time sleeping in on the weekends because I wake up at like my normal time of like 5 o'clock in the morning that I've been doing, and I lay there and think about I have so many things I need to get done today. I have so many things I need to get done next week, and my mind just starts to run wild with all that stuff, and I cannot fall back asleep. So just not being able to calm myself down and freaking out about all the stuff that I have to do in the morning has been a real joy, just a real treat when you want to sleep in during the weekends and you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're like, no, I'm going to go back to bed. And your brain's like, no, man, we're going to get up and we're going to be productive.
So I actually had this article scheduled for later in the episode, but I guess it's a perfect spot to transition to it now. It's an article from Psych Central, and it's 6 signs you're a productivity addict. So the first one is, are you acutely aware of when you are wasting time? Do you beat yourself up for it?
Oh, constantly, all the time. Every time that I am not productive and I think about, and it's awful because I'll be like, I need to do X, Y, and Z, right? And so then I start thinking about doing the first thing. So I have to do my laundry, I have to do homework, and I have to edit some episodes for the podcast or whatever, right? So I'll start thinking about the first thing that I need to do. So I'll start thinking about I need to do laundry. And then my brain will spiral and I'll get into this weird state of paralysis where I'm freaking out about everything that I need to do. And I'm not actually doing anything. And I'm just wasting time freaking out about the things that I have to do.
Yeah, you never accomplish anything because you're like, my to-do list is so big. You keep adding things. And then when you start to accomplish those things, you think of more things. And then you think, well, I don't want to forget about that. I can't forget about this. And so you go to write it down. You get distracted. Then a text comes in and it's just like...
Or you start on something on your to-do list, I'm going to clean my bathroom. And then you start doing that and you're like, oh, these rugs are dirty, so now I'm going to wash the rugs. And then you end up doing the laundry. And then you end up doing the laundry for the entire house. And then you end up mopping your laundry room because that's gross. And then you go back and you're like, oh, I need to vacuum the living room. So then you spiral into that and you end up cleaning the living room. And then you go back to what was I doing to start all this? And I was cleaning my bathroom.
And then you go back to it, and then you're like, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten all day. It's 4 p.m., and then you go eat, and then you're like, wow, I'm finally getting started on my to-do list, and it's 5 p.m.
Right?
Yeah, it's not fun. Second one, I don't know how I feel about this one. It says, are you reliant on technology to optimize your time management? I wouldn't say reliant.
Yeah, I don't think I probably actually underutilize technology to be time sufficient, time savvy, time aware, whatever that is. I have a to-do list on my phone, but it's only for
too. The reminders are great.
It's only for certain things, and I don't use it all the time.
I feel to restructure this is are you relying too much on technology and it's hindering your time management?
Oh, you spend too much time setting up alarms and creating to-do lists so you're never actually get anything done?
I'm going to prep and prepare for my XYZ task. And then you're just what am I doing? Why don't I just do it?
Right. You spend time writing it down so you can check off the box.
And then you want to make it all pretty, and then you want, oh, it's so bad. It's so stupid.
It's like procrastinating through organization.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, I always feel like I have to be productive, but then on like at the same time, I think it gets to the point where you're like, you think about it so much. You're feeling like you always got to do things, so you do things, and then you don't do things, and then you still do things, and then you're like, okay, I still have this, I have this, and then at the end of the day, you're just like, well, I've put enough effort into this, and you haven't done anything, and then you just procrastinate and put it off.
You've just made a to-do list. You've set up your to-dos for tomorrow that you should have done today. Yep, I know. Yep, I know exactly what that's like.
Yeah, I feel attacked. The third one is your number one topic of conversation how busy or how crazy busy you are? Do you think hustling sounds impressive while doing less sounds lazy? I'm like in between with this one.
I feel like for me, it comes up in conversation when like I'll meet somebody new, or I'm like talking to a friend I haven't seen in a long time, and they're like, oh, how are you doing? And I like all of a sudden like that question of like, how's it going? How's your day been? What have you been up to? And like that set of questions just like
Triggers
reminds me of all of the things that I've done and that I've been doing and that I still need to do, that I end up like falling down this rabbit hole of like, let's stand here in the grocery store for 30 minutes and talk about how I'm so incredibly busy, and yeah, go ahead and text me, but I probably won't text you back because I'm busy with literally everything in my entire life. So I don't think I do it because I think it sounds impressive. I don't feel like, I don't recognize with that at all, but I feel like having all of those things is impressive, but also not healthy. Like, to a certain extent, like, it's not healthy.
Well, I think it's like in those moments I'm only trying to impress myself because I'm so hypercritical of myself that if I haven't done enough, then yeah, doing less feels lazy in my mind.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Like,
maybe
I'm having the
like,
conversations in my mind. Like, if I'm hustling, if I'm going, if I'm grinding, if I'm doing a bunch of different things, sounds impressive in my head. And it is, and it pleases that self-hypocritical piece to my brain. And then when you're like, oh, I'm going to take a break and, just chill for like 5 minutes. And you're just like,
maybe
just feels lazy. So
maybe
I think if that, in that context of it, then yes.
Maybe I'm just trying to like talk myself into like recognizing all of the things that I've done, because I do have to do that sometimes. Like, I'll have to sit back and think about like all of the things that I've accomplished and how far I've actually come, because sometimes it doesn't feel like I've come far enough with like where I am in the world. There's a really great quote that I should probably find for one of these episodes, but it's something along the lines of like, a degree at the age of 50 is still a degree. Like, buying a house later in life is still buying a house. Like, don't let other people's timelines define your own timeline. And I think that I get caught up in that sometimes of like, oh, I'm going to be 27 this year and I should be at this other place in my life, when like my personal timeline is perfect for who I am. Like, it's my timeline. Like, I'm not living somebody else's life. I need to sometimes take a step back and recognize just how far I have personally come, because that's another hard part for me, is like, I feel like I have to be more productive because I don't feel like I've come far enough sometimes.
The third one, are you slave to your email inbox, compulsively checking it, or feeling like your phone is an extension of your arm? I'm definitely the second one. Like, the inbox piece, like, meh. I'm not like...
Yeah, the 16,000 emails in my spam Gmail account
can
wait.
Yeah. But yeah, that feeling like your phone is an extension of your arm, that's something I've really wrestled with. And have been trying to be more intentional with. I've actually condensed my phone to one screen.
Ooh.
So it's I guess, yeah, one screen. Even though it looks like it has quite a bit now. I mean, before I had like 3-4 screens, 2.5 were full, the rest were just scattered, and then it was just like I just went through and I was just purging my apps. I was like, don't use this enough, don't use this enough, shouldn't use this, and so I kind of went through, and so definitely guilty of that. But it's like that, like it's like that hit, that dopamine hit that everybody talks about nowadays. You're like checking and striving for that, like to check to see if you got that like, or if you got that comment, or if if you got, and you're like, we run to these things to get that. And it's the more I think about it, I'm just like, well, who have I become?
Right. I've kind of like set timers on certain apps for myself. So
I do too.
I've limited like how much I can use YouTube. I've limited how much I can use like I used to have the Facebook app, and I found myself falling into a hole with that. So I just deleted the app altogether.
Wait, does the YouTube, does it, so like if you watch YouTube on the computer, will it track it and still like you're not like,
No.
if you watch it for 4 hours at work and then you come home and you only have 4 hours a day, is it not going to let you do it?
No, it doesn't track it that way. It probably should, because like that is also
escapism
something.
in real life. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm super guilty of that, but it does track it. So like if I'm like, especially on the weekends, if I'm trying to be more productive, I have it set so with my phone, I have it set to where like on the weekends I can use certain things less. So like I use Instagram less, I use Snapchat less, I use YouTube and all those other things less, just because like I do want to be productive on the weekends. And it's not so much that like I'm trying to like constantly be productive. I think I'm trying to do the things that I actually am interested in doing. Like we all have the whole like 9 to 5, 8 to 5 thing going on. And while I don't necessarily dislike the job that I have, it takes up my time to be able to do the things. It takes up my time to actually be able to do the things that I do want to do. Like I'm learning how to do animation. I'm learning how to, we're working on running a business. We're learning about podcasting. We're learning about like all these things that I actually want to be doing with my time, and being at work inhibits that. So it takes up a large majority of my time. And so like on the weekends, I want to try to be as productive as I can in the things that I actually want to do.
Well, like the that podcast that I showed you, the Craig Rochelle leadership podcast, when he talks about like cutting slack out. He's like, people talk about all the time how busy you are, how packed your schedule is, how you have no time for getting all of the things that you need to get done that day. But in all actuality, what he mentions is like, in most cases, people actually don't have that much going on. It's just they have a lot of slack in between those things, which inhibits and prevents them from actually getting those types of things done. And so, he was talking about like on any given week, like the most successful people in the world, like a study went through and they waste like 20 hours a week. And those are the most successful people. I'm nowhere close to that. So I'll probably waste like, 60 hours a week. Like, and so like thinking of that, I'm just like, wow, like that. And so that's kind of like on this topic of like I've set limits and stuff too, like you said, and kind of like just trying to keep that away. So like in those moments, I can just focus, do what I need to do, not get distracted, not get caught up, and just focus for that, and then take the breaks if I need to, and then get back to it and focus on it. I think it's helped, like implementing those practices and stuff. But yeah, it's great. Oh, this next one's definitely for you.
Well, I think like with the phone thing, like I know that I'm addicted to my phone. Like I am addicted to checking my phone. I'm addicted to like doing things on my phone. Like if I don't have my phone in my pocket when I leave the house,
2 phones.
I feel awful. Technically one of them isn't actually a phone. It's just a technology brick that I still need to carry around to actually get into my schoolwork. So I don't use it very often. I mostly use my actual phone. I still have it and it still works as like a piece of technology, but I do recognize that I am addicted to it, and so I wonder like if that is actually, I don't even need to wonder. I'm fairly confident that that is contributing to my like increased inability to pay attention to stuff. Like I've
And
never been
anxiety.
well, yeah, like I've never been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, but like I feel super ADD sometimes. Like I cannot pay attention to things. I constantly want to like look at my phone. I like when I'm trying to pay attention to something, my brain is like going 100 miles a minute and thinking about like everything except for the thing that I'm trying to pay attention to. And so I wonder if my technology has contributed to that. Maybe that's something I should like work on, is like locking my phone away from myself.
Well, it's funny you said that. I watched a video. This dude locked his phone in a box for 30 days. And once he locked it in there, he actually forgot to turn the ringer off. So that was even worse. So it's over there pinging. You got that like you're like you like shaking. You're like oh my gosh, what is that? Like what is like oh that and it was just constantly going off, and you it's almost like you could tell like he had like itchy. FOMO. You got like oh I gotta go grab it, and so so that was for like a day and a half, 2 days or whatever, and then his phone died, and he was like yeah I definitely noticed it got better, and so in those moments, I mean, he was like, I think he read like so many books that month. He did so many other things, and like it was just insane how much he was able to do. And then by the like towards the end of it, he's like, I didn't even miss it, And then he got back to it, and he's like, and so like I've seen some similar things too, and that I've really wanted to be implementing is like how people say, oh, just don't keep your phone in your room at night. Like plug it in, on the counter or wherever you're gonna keep it, and then you're in your bedroom.
Buy an alarm clock.
Yeah, well, you got your watch.
Yeah, you're right.
So let's try that this week. 7-day challenge. No phone in the bedroom.
Ooh.
At night, I'm gonna tell Jess this. She's gonna flip.
She's gonna be so upset.
We're gonna do it. But
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. That way you're not like waking up and then you get up and then you check Instagram. You're like, oh, Susie's on vacation again. I'm depressed now because I'm in bed and it's 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and I'm in flag. I'm like, and you're just like, wow, just instant.
Right.
So yeah, I'm gonna do it.
All right, let's do it. We'll challenge ourselves.
And I think it's good too because we're already scheduling the downtime. Setting the limits. But I think if you're getting in bed and you're like, oh, I'm not that tired yet, like, let me just override this downtime and limit or whatever, and then I'm just sitting there defeating the purpose of the whole thing. But if you keep it outside of your room, you have the downtime, and that's like physically your downtime.
Well, like a lot of the time, like I'll get in bed and I'll be like, oh, okay, it's bedtime. And so I'll be laying there in bed and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to scroll through Instagram because I'm not really tired yet, right? Like you said. And so I'm like sitting there and I'm scrolling through Instagram. I got in bed at like 10 and the next thing I look and it's like midnight. And I'm like, where did my 2 hours go? I just spent 2 hours.
Later.
Yeah, literally. And so I'm like, here I am, like waking up super tired because I didn't go to bed on time because, my dumb ass is sitting in bed scrolling through Instagram when I should be friggin' asleep. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put my phone in the kitchen and I'm gonna plug it in and it can just hang out in the kitchen and live its best life. And I'm gonna do it.
This next one's for you. Do you feel guilty when you only cross one item off your to-do list, or you find yourself kept awake at night by work stress or just stress in general?
Oh God. Constantly. It is like so bad. I'll think about like if I don't finish a project during the day because I get addicted to completing things Like I there must be some kind of like dopamine released when I complete something, because like if I'm working on a project at work and I'll go home and I haven't finished the project, I will spend so long thinking about like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. What if I did it? What if I did the project this way? What if I tried it this other way? What if I did this? What if I did this other thing? And so I like constantly lay awake at night. Or like with school stuff or with the podcast, I'll think of things like, oh, we should try this thing for our social media, or we should try like recording our podcast this way, or we should, talk about this particular subject on the podcast, or do this other thing. And so I'll like constantly be like thinking about ways to like improve or change or implement certain things all night long. It is really awful.
Well, then the opposite of that is like when you get really excited about things and you're like, oh, this is sweet. Like, and you're like stoked to like, oh, I don't want to go to bed. I want to just do this. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to implement this. I want to like, and it just keeps going. And then it's just like,
yeah, like the project that we're working on for class right now, like we're paired with this really great company, and like I keep thinking about all the ways that we could help them and all the ways that we could make their company more successful and better, and how we're going to do this project and how we're going to help them. And I get so excited about it that I'm putting the cart way before the horse, and I have to like reel myself in a little bit and kind of roll it back and be like, okay, we haven't actually started the project yet. We have to slow down. Like everything's going to take time. And I think that's the big thing for me is like, it's going to take time, and I am so impatient, like so incredibly impatient.
Well, the sixth piece here actually it references projects. It says, have you ever rolled your eyes when your friend says she'll finally get started on that side project she's been talking about for months, yet you do the exact same thing and rationalize it by thinking you're too swamped? Like, it not in the same context, but like, I think in my idea is just like when we get in those moments when we get like super hype about it and we're like into it, and you're thinking of all these things and you just want to do now. You don't like no waiting, no patience at all. And then you're working with someone who's like a slow moving train. Like,
oh God.
And then it's just like, how could like you haven't even written your name down yet? I've already got the presentation rolling through my brain. Like,
right. And
so I think that piece to that last sign is kind of how it applies to my life. But yeah, it's interesting. But article was definitely, yeah, so it says
yeah, I feel
you
attacked.
said yes to any of these questions, how about all of them?
Right, like what is my prognosis, doctor? Am I addicted to doing things?
Remember, we're not doctors, so we can't answer that.
Oh, that's right.
I'll
have to go ask an actual doctor.
This next article is pretty cool, though. It's how to avoid productivity guilt and become more productive in the process.
Ooh, hit me with some knowledge, because I need some of that in my life. I feel horribly guilty about not doing things.
It's that beating yourself up.
Yep.
Yeah. So it says productivity guilt is the mindset of feeling bad about not creating, achieving, or working hard.
I feel that, like, on a spiritual level. It speaks to my soul.
And so the first thing that they mention towards beating productivity guilt is stop comparing yourself to others. Kind of like you mentioned, your whole timeline thing. Like,
yep.
It's just like, and then I think the first one's like someone getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, runs 10 miles before like growing their startup business and, doing all these things and like achieving more in the morning than most people do in their whole week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we see that and we compare ourselves, especially like with the podcast and stuff. Like, it's so easy to be like, yeah, I gotta be productive. Like, we're just starting this, but yeah, that's nothing. I gotta be here. I gotta be like,
I know we haven't even been doing this for a year and we're already like thinking so far into the future. I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day, and we were talking about why millennials are so unhappy. We kind of had a conversation about that like a couple weeks ago. And she was saying like, I think there's this sense of we have to do something important, like we have to be important. Because we were kind of talking about the difference between like the millennials and Gen Z and the baby boomer generation and stuff. And like, I think our parents were content with not standing out in the crowd, right? Like they didn't want to go be a superstar. They didn't want to go be models. They didn't want to go be influencers. They didn't want to go be, president of the United States or whatever. They were content with doing the best that they could in their like everyday regular lives. And I think there's a big piece of our generation and probably future generations that are going to have to deal with this mentality of like, oh, we see like people like Ninja who they started out just playing video games constantly, and now they're like super famous and super rich, and you see kind of people starting from ground zero and going into like these really crazy things. Like you see Jeffree Star, who's like a multi-billionaire, and he's only been doing this thing for like 6 years, right? And like, I think there's this mentality of like, I have to stick out, I have to strive to be like that. And there's so much pressure that we're unnecessarily placing on ourselves because we see people have these successful lives. Like for me, I think success for the podcast and success for our business would just be being able to support our families without being extravagant. Like I could support my family on a certain amount of money a year, right? You could support your family on a certain amount of money a year, and not trying to get to like the multi-billion-dollar net worth that these other people have achieved. Like that, I don't think I want that level of that. I don't want that level of success. That seems like really nauseating. Like being that famous seems like exhausting. So I think for me, like realizing that the goal for the podcast is to just be able to sustain us, and because it is what I want to do. Like I love doing the podcast. I love sharing my story. I love talking through these mental health things. And it is what I want to do ultimately. And I would just love to just live like an average life being able to do that, I think.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because then the piece of like towards the end of that paragraph, it talks about like not living the path of least resistance, and like you should be actively seeking challenges and pushing yourself in some like areas of your life. Like, not to say that comparing yourself to others is like it's not bad, but like if you're letting it consume you, if you're like becoming obsessed over it, then I think that's when it gets to the unhealthy stage. But then it says like, because if you're not going to do that, it says you're going to live a very mundane, average life. Uh-huh. So when you said that, I was like, wow, you're just reading off the paper here.
Well, like it's not so much that like I want to be extraordinary in my own right, I guess. Yeah. Like I don't know, like I want to pick one thing and be good at that one thing. And I like the podcast and I like what we're doing. And so like I want to be good at that, and I don't really need to be extraordinary at all these other things. Like I don't have to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I get that all the time. I'm like, well, I could be this, I could do this, I really want to try this, I think I should do this, and then I'm just like,
it's option paralysis.
I'm like, no, it's like, it's the paradox of choice.
Okay, there you go.
And it's like, I was like, that is me. Like, you have so many options there that you become paralyzed.
Uh-huh.
It's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that's the thing. Like, I want to do the sound production. I want to learn the podcast. I want to learn the marketing side to it. I want to do my master's program. I want to, like, do a bunch of other things, learn how to play the guitar, read more books, spend time with my dog, it's just like, holy crap, like, gotta slow down.
Yep.
It's pretty funny that we transitioned into that, because the next piece of this article is realizing the difference between being busy and being productive.
Oh boy.
And it's like, and part of the that Craig Goschel leadership podcast that I've like fascinated by it is like people almost create work to make yourself think that you're like achieving your, like, so if you have a long to-do list, you're gonna like you sit there and you're like creating work for yourself to make it feel like you're busy and achieving those, the to-dos and being productive because you did a lot of things.
So it's kind of like writing a to-do list item for write a to-do list, create a to-do list for creating a to-do list.
Yeah, so then you're like, okay, cool, I've knocked out my list, I made a to-do list, I closed my pen cap, and then I went and washed my hands.
Right.
Like, it's like, no, you did stuff. And so this next piece of the article is pretty neat because it was like, people are like, yeah, I was so productive today. Were you though? Like,
right.
And I think that's what leads to the procrastination piece in my life. I'm like, yeah, I was productive today. I made that list. I prepped for future me in terms of how I'm going to tackle that problem that I probably should do right now. But yeah, that's enough for me today. I'm going to go play video games.
Right.
And then it's just like, yeah, I was productive today. I fiddled around with a to-do list and made it seem like I'm actually accomplishing things and didn't actually really get any one step closer to the goals that I need to do this week.
Right. Yeah, it's I think it's hard. It's hard to start things, and so I think we make up these like tiny little minute steps that don't really mean a whole lot to try to trick ourselves into thinking that we're being productive, because like maybe the things on our to-do list are things we don't actually want to do.
It's like what we're telling ourselves what we have to do or what we should be doing, and then you're just like,
but you're like, I don't actually want to do any of this stuff.
Yeah, I've done that. I did that last week. I was like writing all these things that I think I should need to, the homework, the prepping for the pot, things like that I'm like thinking I need to do. And then like a couple hours go by and like I didn't accomplish anything on that list, but I'd like done other things that I'd wanted, that I was like have needed to do. Like, and most of that comes with like the household chores. Like I, needed to do the dishes and needed to make the bed, needed to clean my bathroom, needed to do this, take out the trash, needed to walk the dog, things like that. And I'm just like, you go back to your to-do list. I'm like, wow, I haven't done anything today. I'm not productive. But then like I had to sit back and I was like, whoa. Like I actually did. And then so I wrote out what exactly I did. And then I'm like, okay, like I've actually done things today that I otherwise wouldn't have done. But then it's still that piece of like, that's why I have a hit or miss with to-do lists, is because like I'll write it all down. I'm like, cool, great, I got to do this. And then it's just like,
you like forget about it. Like
I'll forget about
it down,
or like
I'll
do it. Yeah, I'll do it. And then like I'll finish all the assignments. And then I realize 3 days later, I'm like, oh, I haven't updated my to-do list. I've just done it. And then the opposite of that, it's just like that'll stick maybe for like in the context of our classes. Beginning of the semester, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, be more productive, write out all your assignments. And then like week to week goes by and you're just flying by the seat of your pants, just like hanging in there. You're not even like checking your to-do list off. And so that's why I'm like,
you don't even know what day it is anymore
don't
at
even
one point.
Like I don't, like, it's not that like when I'm actually doing it, it's fine, it's great, but then it's just like I don't like that anxiety feeling like you need to stick to it is almost where it's just like that just becomes a more overwhelming for me, and it doesn't leave me anywhere closer to I don't know.
Well, I liked what you said about like taking stock of the things that you have done, because I think that can help with the whole feeling productive thing. Like there was this, I used to do this thing and I don't know why I don't do it anymore, but I used to write down everything that I'd done. Well, at least like things that were productive that I'd done throughout the day. And it helped me kind of take stock of my day and kind of like recognize that even though I haven't felt like I did things that were productive, I actually did have some kind of productivity throughout the day. And like, that's kind of what I think one of my really good friends is really good at that with me, of like reminding me of how far I've come in terms of just my life in general. Like all the things that I accomplished when I was going through all the stuff with my mom, everything that like I've helped my brother accomplish so far with all of that, and like building my own household from the ground up, like having to be able to sit back and take stock of that helps me put where I'm at in my life into perspective. And I think maybe that's something that we should also try to incorporate more, is trying to take stock of the things that you do throughout the day and recognize that like you are making progress. You just don't see it because it's not as fast as you'd like it to be.
So with our 7-day challenge, no phones in the bedroom, we're not making to-do lists this week. We're making done-did lists this
Done
week.
did.
Doesn't matter what you need
No,
to
I love
do. It matters what you done did.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, I think that's just like, I don't know, it just came to me. I was like, I gotta say this.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, productivity guilt. Definitely guilty of that. No pun intended. But yeah, that was a great article by lifehack.org. We'll include both of these articles and then linked in the descriptions of wherever you're listening. So the next article actually kind of ties into how we're doing the quote today. And the quote actually comes from the article. And the article is from medium.com from Richard Whittall. And it starts off, so the article itself is called Your Work is Not Your Worth. And so I think that transitions perfectly in terms of what we were saying in the previous article, how busy doesn't always mean productive. And so when you're thinking like, oh, I've done so much today, and you know, you're justifying the fact whether or not you were actually productive, but then in the sense of where you may have done a lot, but not what you needed to do, and then you're like starting to analyze everything, and then you're like thinking down on yourself, and you're kind of beating yourself up of like, oh, I didn't do anything today, like, and you just get down this rabbit hole. I think this article is kind of neat, as it's, you know, your work doesn't define you. It doesn't define your worth or your value. So the quote from this article comes from David D. Burns. He's a doctor. He says, a silent assumption that leads to anxiety and depression is, my worth as a human being is proportional to what I have achieved in my life. This attitude is at the core of the Western culture and the Protestant work ethic. It sounds innocent enough. In fact, it is self-defeating, grossly inaccurate, and misleading. And so when we look through this article and like it started off with that quote, I was just like, wow, like, dude speaking some truth on my life. I like partially feel attacked and like, I don't know, it just makes a lot of sense, you know, because there's all this pressure in today's society. Like, we always feel like we have to optimize every single moment, or like, you know, take that next step towards improving our life or improving our whatever it may be, XYZ, you know, you name it. And so I think to like end today's episode with this quote, I mean, I found it, and it was just like, it clicked, you know, and I think it's really important, you know, at the end of the day, no matter what you've done or what you still have to do, or regardless of what that looks like in your day, like that's not what defines you. That's not what makes you who you are. Like kind of like the other articles were saying, like, oh, it's impressing to do all that stuff. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right? Like, is it though? I really like that my worth as a human being is proportional to what I have achieved in my life. Like that thought is so incredibly detrimental to your mental health. Like thinking about how, kind of like I was saying before, like looking at people who are your same age who've maybe like achieved so much more in their lives than you have, and you're constantly comparing yourselves to them and thinking about like, wow, why haven't I achieved the same level of success that this other person has? Like none of our paths are the same, right? Like Austin's journey to this podcast was not the same as my journey to this podcast. Sure, we met in the middle somewhere and have kind of combined our journey a little bit, but that still doesn't mean that our journeys are the same. Like, his outcome of his life and my outcome of my life are completely separate because we're not the same person. And like, I think we all need to recognize that a little bit more, and that just because somebody else who is doing better than you, quote unquote better than you, in a certain area of their life doesn't mean that they're better than you. And like, your life isn't defined by the amount of productivity or the amount of like material things that you have. I think it's one of those things that we all kind of have to sit down and recognize eventually, of like, wow, I am worth enough as a human being in where I'm at right now. Like, what I have accomplished is enough, and I need to be thankful for that. And that's something that I struggle with personally. Like, I constantly think about, like, where am I going to be in 10 years? Where am I going to be in 5 years? What is this going to look like? How do I get there? When I really should maybe be sitting down more and thinking about, like, look at where I've come. Look at where I have been in my life. Look at all the things that I've accomplished already, and just being thankful for the opportunity to have even accomplished those things.
Well, and I think, like with what you said, like wondering where I'm going to be in 5 years, where I'm going to be in 10 years, and then really stopping to think of like how far you've come, or where you're at now. I think, like, now that I'm looking back on it, like that's like that mindset, I think it's ultimately what led to me going down that pit of anxiety, depression, and on all of the events of the summer, was I was like, okay, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to take this job. I took this job before I graduated. Then I'm going to graduate. I have the summer off like I normally do. I'm starting this master's program. I'm doing this. I got to get my degree, and then I got to get another degree because that's what society tells me. And, that's all the stuff that I've told myself. I'm not going to med school. I'm not going to chiropractor school. So I'm going to do this in the interim and figure it out for a little bit, and I'm pressing myself. And for me, kind of like you're saying, you're looking at everybody around you and you're like, okay, well, this person's doing this, this person's doing this, this person's doing this. And so I think for me, like, being like one of the youngest people on our team, like, it's difficult for me to do that because I'm seeing everybody else at where they're at. And I'm like, okay, well, he's got this. And like, I have to slow myself down sometimes and realize like where I'm at for my age, like, in terms of what I've done and things like that. And so, like, understanding that now, prior to what happened this past summer, like, I was just, I was grinding away at, like, got to do this, got to get next, all right, what's, I'm like not living in the moment, I'm like 5 steps ahead of myself, trying to plan for this, then that, then this, then that. And if this doesn't work, then that, like all these different things. And so it's like, it was so easy to get caught up in that. And it's just like, oh, like I don't even know like who I was, it was like my identity was that. Like,
yeah, you didn't have a way of separating yourself from it. I think that's a good point, because I think like a lot of people who are moving on into different chapters of their lives. So like people who may be graduating from high school and going into college, or graduating from college and going into maybe a new degree program, or who are graduating from college and who are going into the workforce. Like, it's okay to slow down and take stock of where you've come from. Right? So just kind of hang out for a little bit and think about how far you've come wherever you are in your life, right? So if you're graduating from high school and you're going into college, think about all the things that you accomplished while you were in high school, and just be thankful that you had the opportunity to do those things. Or like if you're graduating from college and you're going into a new job, just take stock of all the things that you have accomplished during your college career and realize like how far you've come. And like, the time will pass, you will get to where you want to be, but just live in the moment of graduating, or live in the moment of like this is your last semester of college, and don't necessarily panic so much about the future, because you will figure it out, right? Like it might not seem like it now, but you will figure it out. Things will be as they should be. And you don't have to have an answer right in this very moment. Just recognize how far you've come and just be appreciative for that in the moment.
We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Just a number of hands out there. Anybody else struggle with this? Or we just two people that just love chatting about these?
Oh yeah, we're just the two crazy people who are having this problem.
But yeah, we'd love to hear about it. I mean, I think this is such a big topic and a big thing that people struggle with and people deal with, that they don't, like, I never realized I was doing it until I, took a step back, slowed down a bit, and, like, was mindful of how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, like, why I'm doing it, and so it's fascinating to think about now, and it's interesting to see kind of like where we're at now in terms of where we've grown and stuff. So we'd love to hear more about your guys' story and stuff, and how you can relate to this episode. As always, if there's any quotes that you guys would like to share with us, please go ahead and DM us on Instagram, and be sure to send any questions or suggestions for episode topics to askfrank@frankdisconnect.com. Give us a follow on Spotify and iTunes. Click that subscribe button on YouTube, wherever you're listening. Stay in touch. Find ways to get connected with us. And lastly, don't forget to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/frankdisconnect. Thanks again for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Disconnect.